Hello and welcome to this short video where I'm going to be telling you how you can get a good result for the 2026 A-levels that are upcoming in 4 months. This video is targeted towards those people that have done the 2025 A-level and may not have gotten the result that they would expect and would like to try again in 4 months. This video is being made by popular demand in the comments of my previous videos. Before we begin, there are 2 prerequisites that you need to have in order to achieve the result that you want. First of all, you need to have already completed the syllabus. This will likely be the case since you have already done the 2025 A-levels. So if you have not completed the syllabus, then within the next 4 months, it may be difficult for you to complete that last part of the syllabus and then prepare for the exam. So for that reason, it is ideal if you have already covered the entire syllabus. If you haven't, and there's a little bit that you have to cover yet, it may still be possible for you to achieve a good result with that. However, it is ideal if you have already covered the entire syllabus. The second prerequisite is that you should have the motivation in order to do this. Now with the result that you got, you may be feeling demotivated, you might be feeling that you might not be able to do this within these 4 months. And if you have that kind of mentality, then you will definitely not be able to achieve well in those 4 months. You need to have the proper motivation and proper mentality that you can achieve it. And then if you can achieve it and you really work towards it, you will achieve it. Now that that's out of the way, let's discuss what you can actually do to achieve your result. One thing I see a lot of people doing is going back to the syllabus and revising it. So going back to the books, reading through them and revising the entire syllabus. I do not think that this is an effective use of these 4 months of time. And the reason for that is that even though you will know the syllabus better and you will understand the syllabus better, when you go to the exam under the exam pressure, if you cannot put pen to paper and write down all of the things that you know, you will not be getting marks. Since you have already covered the entire syllabus, the best thing for you to do is to write a couple of exam papers, couple of past papers and do the following things. Number 1, time management. A lot of students are actually quite competent in the syllabus. They can answer all of the questions if given enough time. The issue is that the exam is not long enough. If the exam was 5 hours long instead of 3 hours, then a lot more students will be getting higher marks. The issue of course is that the exam is not 5 hours long, it is 3 hours long, and this time pressure will add to the difficulty of the exam. This difficulty is of course by design. You are expected to work under the time pressure and solve all of the questions that you need to solve within those 3 hours, and we are not going to be compromising with any longer exams. So that means that you yourself should start writing these questions faster in order to keep up with the time of the exam. If you are a student that struggles with time management, then what you should do in order to maximize your mark is to prioritize questions that give you the most amount of marks in the least amount of time. To find which questions give you the most amount of marks in the least amount of time, what you should do is to do past papers. Take any particular past paper, take a question in that past paper, take your phone or something to start a timer, start the timer, and then write the answer to that question as quickly as you can. And then stop the timer and record your time. You can then compare this time with the average expected time for that kind of question that you would expect for your paper. Here are some example times that you would take for certain questions in certain papers. As you can see, I've listed all of the A-level physical science papers here because I myself did A-level physical science. You can of course find the corresponding times for other streams as well or other exams as well, and there's nothing stopping you. So after finding that, compare your time with that expected time. If your time is lower than the expected time, it means that you are really good at that question. And that means that you're getting more marks per unit time for that particular question, which means you should prioritize those kinds of questions. You should try to do them first before you move on to other questions. If you have questions where you take a considerably large amount of time compared to the expected time, let's say plus 5 minutes, plus 10 minutes, or maybe even 1.5 times as much time or double the time, something like that, then that means that that kind of question is not suited to you. You should probably not do it. Or if you're planning on doing it, then you need to greatly improve your performance in that particular question. The second thing you should do is review common mistakes. This is relevant for both the MCQs and essay type questions. In the MCQs, you could do things like miss keywords. For example, you could miss the not keyword. In essay type questions, you might do things like forget units, write units incorrectly. You might do unit conversions incorrectly. You might write scientific formula incorrectly. You might even miss the decimal point or things like that. Things like this are easily correctable mistakes, and by correcting them, you might gain, maybe 5 points per question or something like that if you frequently make these kinds of mistakes. So that's a very easy thing to fix, and I highly recommend that you fix them before you do anything else. My third point is about something that you should never do if you're doing an exam under time pressure, and that is get stuck on questions. If you get stuck on questions, it is actually a huge waste of time, and there are two reasons for that. Reason number one is that when you're stuck on a question, you're not getting any marks by wasting time on that question. Furthermore, you're also losing marks because you could potentially be using that time that you're wasting on some other question that you would be gaining marks on. So not only are you stuck on that question and not gaining any marks on that question, you are also losing marks that you could potentially be gaining by doing some other question instead. So never get stuck on a question. If you're doing an MCQ, just mark that question with a circle or something and move on to the next question. You can always come back. If you're doing an essay type question, then put a little line somewhere in either your exam paper or that particular answer sheet itself and move on to the next exam paper and come back when you're done. Now, if you don't have time management issues but you're still not getting proper marks, it's likely because you're not writing your answers correctly. Now, not writing your answers correctly doesn't necessarily mean that your answers are incorrect. It just means that you're not writing them potentially to the correct structure that is expected by the paper. So how do you figure out what the correct structure is? Well, the only real good way to figure that out is to check the mark schemes, because the mark schemes actually contain the answers in the structure that the examiner would expect to see them when they're marking the paper. So what you should do is take a look at the mark scheme, go through each of the steps provided in the mark scheme, look at how they're done, and then apply that principle to your answers. So when you're doing, for example, a physics question, you might see that in the mark scheme they're first writing the theory that they're using, they're then finding all of the variables that they're going to be substituting into that theory, that formula, and then they substitute into the formula, they simplify it down to a final answer, and then put the unit in the front. Now, when you do things like this, when you look at the mark scheme and you compare with your answer, you might note that certain steps are missing, or maybe certain steps are written in different orders, or certain steps are written in different ways. You might also see that the exam sheet here is using a completely different method to the method you are using. Now, in that particular case, it may be still alright to go with your method, since if your method is absolutely correct, they will grade it and give you marks for it. However, it is a safer bet to just go with the method that they are commonly using, as that method will be the method that's provided in the mark scheme of that next year's A-level examination as well. So my advice to you is to go with the mark scheme for each individual question, compare your answer to the mark scheme's answer, and try to format your answer to match with the mark scheme's answer. Now, doing that, you will have an advantage because that will be exactly what the examiner is looking for, meaning that there will be a greater chance that the examiner gives you marks. In addition to that, another thing that will probably help is to structure your answers and make them look nice. When you write something wrong, don't cut it out with a scribble or something. Cut it out with straight lines such that it makes it look much more neater. When you are drawing a diagram, maybe use a pencil and use rulers and compasses and all of that to draw the diagram nicely. Doing that, your answer will be more structured, will look nicer, and in general, the examiner will find it easier to grade it and give you marks. And my last bit of advice to you is to, when doing past papers, do only the most recent past papers. Do the past papers from 2017 up to the present. The reason I recommend that you do like that is because while you could do past papers that are older than that, and I know personally some people who do past papers all the way back until the 1990s, those past papers are outdated compared to the more modern past papers. Yes, they do contain knowledge and they are of course correct proper papers. However, the structure of the papers have evolved since those times up to the present. So if you want to understand what kind of answers you are expected to give and how you are expected to give them, the better papers to review are the papers that are most recent. I recommend doing the papers from 2017 all the way up to the present. You could even do all the way up to 2010 if you wanted, but I'd recommend sticking with the most recent, as in the 2017 to 2025 currently papers. If you do those papers, I guarantee you will fully understand the structure if you follow the method I have been describing, and when you go to the actual exam, you will be very familiar with the kind of answers that you are expected to provide for each question, and it will be much easier for you to actually provide those answers within the required time. So that's going to be all for this video. I hope you enjoyed. Please post your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you for watching and goodbye.